Hey everyone, good morning and good evening. This is Rakesh here. Welcome back to today's session. And right, if you have any questions, we will just start the session in a bit. We are just waiting for a couple of more people to join. So if you have any questions, please go ahead and ask your questions on the sessions that we had so far. I'll clarify them.
Hi sir, good morning.
Hey Lakshmi, good morning.
Sir, actually you were explaining yesterday about the orders and template tables. No sir, I was a little bit confused about that. Could you please explain me once again that?
So that is just a database table, Lakshmi. So, you know, So on the database side, I have to make something as my source so that I can read the data from there, right? So I use this Northwind database as my source, and this has two tables called orders and order details. So I'm just using those tables here as my sources. Just my source tables, nothing more than that.
Okay sir.
Any more questions?
Thank you sir.
Alright, thanks. Right, if you have any questions, please let me know. You can ping me on chat or you can just raise your hand so that I can unmute you and you can ask your question. I'll just start in another 2 minutes. We are just waiting for our friends to join. Alright, so if you don't have any more questions, we will proceed with today's topics. Alright, so yesterday we were looking at SAP ECC extraction and writing it into a database and a flat file. So the extractions that we saw are from flat file to a flat file. Then second one is a flat file to a database. Then third one is a database to a flat file. Fourth one is a database to a database. Fifth one is ECC to database and flat file simultaneously. Hey Zafar, good evening.
Hi, good evening.
Hey, yeah. You can see the screen and listen to my voice clearly, right?
Yeah.
Alright, so any questions, Zafar, before we proceed with today's topic?
No, that's fine, that's fine.
Alright,
I think
thank you.
I accidentally pressed the button, I think. Sorry.
Okay. I mean, just be on mute, and if you have any questions, please unmute yourself and go ahead with the question.
Okay, no problem.
Right, thanks, Zafar. Right, so these are the different types of extractions. So we covered databases, flat files, and SAP system. So now we will also see something called as conditions, scripts, and global variables. So what is this condition scripts and global variables, and in which scenario I'll be using them? So if you look at this diagram, I'll just give you a pictorial view of what I'm trying to explain. So I have a job. So let us say this rectangle box is my job, my entire job, and I have bits and pieces of work in that one. Okay. So let me name them as first part as extraction, the second part as validation, and third part as enrichment. Okay, so I have three parts: extraction, validation, and enrichment. Now I want to run this job. So when I run this job, what will happen? First it will execute the job, and based on the order of execution, first it will go with extraction, then it goes to validation, and from there it goes to enrichment. So these are the order, this is the order in which all these three will be executed. But every time I don't want to extract, because let us say extraction itself is taking somewhere around 15 minutes of time. So I don't want to take extraction and again and again, right? Every time I don't want to run my extraction job. So some things are there that you just need to run only once, right? So what I can do is I want to choose which block of my code can be executed, either this one or this one or this one or the combination, right? So I can just ignore this one and run these two. So this is what we can achieve using condition scripts and global variables. So this is what we can achieve using condition scripts and global variables. So what is the condition and where do we find these conditions? So if you look at a condition, condition is nothing but an if then else statement. So you can go to any job and on the right hand side tool palette, right, you see this one, this is our condition. So this conditional, if you just click on that and click back on the data flow or on the job level, so you will see that if a condition is satisfied, then it goes to the then part. If not, it goes to the else part, right? So condition is nothing but an if then else statement. And let me just complete a framework job. I'll just create a template job, a framework, and which we will fill with this condition scripts and global variables, and we will try to utilize the job here. Okay, so syntactically correct. Yesterday after the session I changed these credentials with a new SAP system and my username and password. So that's the reason why we see it here. Now we'll see how do we import another two tables. We'll also import another two tables called Marcy and Marty. So Marcy is nothing but plant level information for materials. So where these materials are created, in which plant, and the plant level information. So plant data for materials, right? So we are going to extract this one, and this is other object button on the display screen. So if you just click on that, you can go and switch on the tables. Right, this is storage location data for the materials. So I'll try to import these two tables. So remember, this is the external data. Please cross-check your source, the type of the object that you are searching for, and is that an internal data or external data, and just click on search. This might take a few more minutes. Once you find the table in the list of tables that is displayed here, all you need to do is select the table, right click and import that table so that you can see them here in this list. So in this concept we also will see reusability option. Right, how I can reuse an existing object. So one thing I want to make it very clear, so when I say object, so this object can be a job, a workflow, a data flow, a table, a data store, a transformation, a flat file, anything that we use within data services is referred as an object, right? So just don't get confused whenever I say an object. It can be anything. So there are two types of objects that we use in data services. There, like single-use object and reusable objects. So with the concept of reusability, we save a lot of time and we can use the already existing objects that we have utilized or that we have created and used in some other jobs. So that will help us to save a lot of time. I'll also tell you the pros and cons of it. So I'm importing the table Marcy here. So let's go only with Mara and Marcy. We can join that in the third condition. As importing these tables is taking a little longer time, so we'll just go with Mara and Marcy. Alright, so in this job what we'll try to do is we'll extract the Mara table, we extract Marcy table, and we'll try to join that in the third condition. So as per this diagram, the first condition we'll do a Mara ext, then in the second condition we'll do a Marcy ext, and third condition we will do a join between Mara and Marcy. So we will also see how we can join two different tables and data services, and how we can reuse the existing data flow that we have already done for Mara. Alright, so this is done. I'll close this. So I'll build this job. I'll build this template job now. So I'm naming this as job underscore conditions, scripts, and global variables. Data flow, sorry, not data flow. So I want three conditionals, so I'm just creating them three. So condition Mara, then the second one is conditional Marcy, and the third one is condition join. And I have the scripts on the right hand side tool palette. I'll tell you the script, what is script and why we use that. So I'm just trying to create a framework so that we can proceed with this job. So connect this one first, it should be the script, and then Mara condition, Marcy condition, and the join. So this is my framework. Now we are talking about, so this is my annotations button on the right hand side tool palette. So if you click on that and click back on the data services job, so you can add annotations at the job level. So in this job we are using conditions, scripts, and global variables. So let me just expand this. So annotation is nothing but a note kind of an activity on a job level. So this is very helpful, especially when you are trying to hand over the job to the other person, right? You give annotation at the job level, and somebody looks at your job and they understand, okay, this job is built for this purpose, and this is the activity done at each and every data flow level. So there will not be any confusion. Even they miss out on the KD sessions, they can go and look at the annotations and make it pretty comfortable. It will make them feel pretty comfortable to understand the code. So there are different levels in this job where we can also do annotation activities, and comments or like a coding activity, a documentation activity, I can say, to tell it more properly. So we'll also follow those standards, right? So condition is nothing but an if then else object where we can apply a condition or pass a condition, and if the condition is satisfied, first it will execute then part. If the condition is not satisfied, it will go to the else part. Then script. What is script? Declaration of the global variables. So if you look at the C programming language, that is something that we have learned as a first software program in our lives, in our colleges. So if you look at the C program, so it follows a very simple approach. So first one is creation of the global variables, right? Then declaring the global variables, then initializing the global variables, and calling the global variables. So just remember or try to remember these things. So first we will go and create a global variable, that is creation of global variable. Then declaration of global variable, we'll say that okay, these global variables belong to this job, so that is the reason why we create them at the job level. Then we will give them a default value, right? I'll initialize them with some default value and call these global variables whenever it is required. So now initializing global variables is done in script. So that is what I'm trying to type here, declaring the global variables, and calling the global variables is done in these conditionals. So now we need to see how do we create and declare the global variables, right? So to create the global variables, so as I call it global, it should be at my job level. So select the job. Step number one, make sure that you select the job first and then go to tools and you click on variables. So first you need to select the job. So that is the reason why each and every job has its own global variables, right? So you cannot go and create some global variables at the project level. You can have them at the job level. So each and every job has its own global variables. So select the job, go to tools and click on variables button, or you also have one variables button here, right? On the menu bar, you can click on that and it will open a small pop-up and you can just align it to the right hand side if you want it to get stacked to the right hand side. So here we do two things. One is in the green V, it is variables, and the second one is your global variables. The definition itself is very simple. Global, you can declare at the job level and use it everywhere in the job, across the job. And local variables, you can define that within a data flow and you can utilize them within the data flow. So every variable that you create here needs a script, right? So all the variables that you create here needs a script so that they can be initialized with some values. So let us create global variables Mara, Marcy and Mardi. So the naming standards, so to create a global variable first, you select the global variable, right click and do an insert. So it will start something with a dollar symbol, which is an indication for global variable. Just double click on that one and type $GV underscore Mara. So $GV is an indicator saying that this is a global variable. So once your job is done and let us say you have some 15 to 20 global variables, right, and some local variables as well. So that should be a key differentiator which should tell like which is your local and which is your global variable. Hey Sandeep, any questions? Hey Sandeep, can you hear me? I think you are on mute from the organizer end. Not able to see the video.
Yeah. I'm able to hear you, but I'm not able to see the video actually. It is join as listen only mode. I tried thrice, but still it is same.
Okay, but can you try to rejoin Sandeep? Because I think rest of the people are able to see my screen.
Okay, I'll try once more.
Yep, right. Right, so these are the global variables and this is how we create them. So first you right click on the global variables and say insert, and once it is inserted, so you double click on that and give it a proper name. So you can also define like what type of a global variable that you are defining for. It is not just y or n or 1 or 0. You can also define a global variable type, right? So for example, I want to create a daily flat file out of my job, and it should have a timestamp added to that. So how can I do that? I can declare a global variable and call system date into that, and when I'm defining the name of the flat file, I can give the file name ff underscore customer underscore target, then concatenate it by my global variable, which is calling my system date. So in that case, what will happen every day whenever that global variable is called? So it will be ff underscore customer underscore target underscore that day's timestamp. So you can call global variables in that scenarios, right? So you can make it as an integer, right? You can make it as a varchar. So let's keep it as varchar1 because I'm calling values 1 and y and n into this one. Right now we can also give a default value here, right? So if you are creating a global variable, you can give some default value. If you have any default value, you can give a default value to this one and click on OK. Now insert $gv underscore Marcy, it's a varchar1, then insert $gv underscore join, and it's varchar1. So I created these 3 global variables for my 3 conditionals. So now I have to initialize my global variables. So that is what I wrote here. So once I create and declare my global variables, I need to initialize them. So go to script, and script is nothing but a notepad. So just click on the script, and I pull the script from my right hand side tool palette. So click on the script, and if you type anything in data services with a single hash, then it is a comment. So keep this in mind. Let it be in your jobs, in your data flows, in your transformations, right, in your scripts. If you put a hash and type something, then that is a comment. So I have a habit of putting double hash. That's kind of a signature that I had on my jobs from beginning. So script to bias global variables, or then first type $gv, and it will show you the condition name. $gv underscore mara is equal to y. Since I gave it as varchar, character always comes in between the single quotes, semicolon, then put a hash symbol, condition for extracting the mara table, then $gv underscore Marcy is equal to y, capital Y, condition to extract Marcy, then $gv underscore join is equal to y. Condition to join Mara and Marcy. So I also gave comments along with declaring the global variable, so somebody, any layman who can look at this screen can easily understand that what I'm trying to do here, right? So creation of global variables from tool, variables, then declaring the global variables and also giving them some comments here. So everything I'm defaulting it to y, so later stages I'll go and change. Now calling the global variables. So I'll go to my condition and I'll say if $gv underscore Mara is equal to Y. So that is my condition. If this one is equal to the one that I gave in my script, so it can be Y, A, B, C, whatever it is. If that image is equal to that image, this image, then this part will be executed, else it will go to the else part. If you don't give anything in the else part, it will skip and go to the next condition. Alright, so this is my $GB underscore Mara. Then next one is $GB underscore Marcy. Then $GV underscore John. So different type of global variables that we have, we use for defining the inbound directory path, outbound directory path, dates, timestamps, file names. So you can use these global variables for various purposes, right? As you proceed, wherever you feel that you can use a global variable, use that, because the reason why we use these global variables, especially for paths, for file names, is like when you move the code from development to quality system, right? So each and everywhere you need to go and tell, like, okay, this is not my, so let us say your job has some 20 flat files that are getting generated. So 20 locations you need to go and change the folder name or the drive where it is getting saved, because you are moving from development to quality system. So you will have all your new server names and folder names, inbound directory and outbound directories, right? So if you just use global variables in the name of path, and you can go and keep changing them here, right, one place, so then that will be pretty much useful, right? So now reusability. I have already done a data flow Mara ECC extract. If you open this and see, so I already extracted Mara and put it in the stage Mara table. Now let me reuse this. So what is reusability? I can directly call it here, right? And if I go and do some changes here, I'm just not doing anything, I'm just saving, adding one more transformation and saving. So will that go and impact the actual job where I used that particular data flow? So this is the data flow that I reused in this conditional job. But if I go to the actual job where I use this data flow and see, so this is also getting affected, right? So if you are not doing any changes on that particular data flow, so if I go and delete this in this job, right, this is the data flow, and save it, so it will obviously get deleted in my conditions, right? It's getting deleted. So point number one is, if you don't have any changes to be done, right, if you can just reuse it, you can pull it from your data flow. So what if I want to reuse it, but still I want to go ahead and make changes, but those changes should not be impacted on other job, right? So I can make a copy of this by replicating this data flow. So select this data flow, or to that level any object, right click and go and replicate. So when I replicate, it will create a copy of this object with copy underscore one underscore data flow. So just press F2, delete, and make sure that you don't have the same name for two different data flows. It will throw an error. So I'll call this as Mara ext. Just go back, delete this one, and call this one here and delete the flat file. Save it. Right, now go to that job, ECC to DB extract. But there is no change because you made a copy of your existing object and you further worked on the copy of that one, but not the actual object. So at a job level where the actual object is used, there will not be any changes. So keep this in mind whenever you have data flows with some complexity added for one job and you need to almost create a similar data flow for the second one. So you can go and replicate that data flow and utilize that in the second job. So this conditional is done. Then let me go and build the second conditional, that is condition Marcy. So Marcy, I did not create any data flow, so let me create one. So on the right hand side tool palette, click on that and call it as df underscore Marcy. Open this data flow, go to your SAP data store, select Marcy, drag and drop it, and then use a query transformation, and then a template table on the right hand side tool palette and call it as stage Marcy. Select the target data store and click on OK. Connect it with your query transformation. Now open the query transformation and select the required fields from schema into schema out. Unit of issue, material type, MRP controller, indicator. So I just need only these fields. Select all the columns that you need on the schema in, and we can right click and do a map to output, or you can pull one on one like we saw yesterday. You can select one column on your schema in and drag into the other column, or you can select all these columns and also drag them to the schema out, right? So you can do it in 3 ways. Right now I pull all the columns that are required to my schema out, and right, so if I also want to apply a row level filter, so I go to my where condition and say where LVORM is not equal to X. So the same condition we applied for Mara, the same condition applying from Marcy. Now save this. Just go back to the condition join. Now here we have the condition join is equal to Y, and here create a data flow df underscore join. So in this one we will see how do we join 2 different tables. Now go to your target data store. Expand the tables. You have 2 tables called stage Mara and stage Marcy. So these are the 2 tables that I'm going to join now. So I did not run my job yet, which means I did not create my stage Marcy. I'm just creating a metadata here. So keep that in mind. On data services you always work with metadata. Now use the query transformation and call it as qt underscore join, and connect your Mara and Marcy with the query transformation and call it as stage underscore materials. Connect it to your query transformation. Yes, Zafar, go ahead with your question.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can.
Hello?
Yeah, I can.
Rakesh, when you were defining the condition Mara, you said in the if statement yes, but when in the condition MRC you didn't say like this. So
Sorry?
why, when you were defining the condition, in the condition underscore Mara you said, yeah, top here, GB underscore
Okay.
Y, but in the other one, like condition underscore MRC, you didn't say that. You said here, right? GB underscore Mara, yes. Why this is not?
Oh yeah, that's a mistake. That's a mistake. Thanks for identifying that.
Okay.
So it
And
should
the
be
second thing,
given.
there is no icon for the raise hand here in the team meeting.
I think you have one, just in
didn't
the
see
chat window.
It doesn't
Alright,
show
you can
that.
unmute yourself and stop me somewhere, Jafar. That's fine. You have this option
Okay.
to mute and unmute, right? So I can unmute and stop me anywhere.
Okay, no, thank you.
Alright. So, yeah, so here we are working on the metadata. So I created a join condition here, and I use the stage materials table. Guys, just give me a second. I'll be back in a minute. Hey, sorry for that. So here I completed the stage Mara, stage Marcy, and the stage join tables, stage material tables. Now let us go back to the job. Now validate this one. So it has many objects now. So not even one, it has many. It has some global variables, it has data flows, it has conditionals and all these things. Now click on validate all, and it says that there are some errors. So let me first go and look at this one. Qt Matner is not mapped, right? So in Qt underscore scope, so first data flow. So this is the transformation Qt underscore slow scope, and it says Qt Matner is not mapped. What is the reason why it is? Okay, so select this one, drag and drop it onto the Matner. Now it is mapped, right? You see the value being populated in the mapping column. The second one, Qt join, no columns defined for the target schema, right? So that's a mistake. Now I did not complete this one. So I select the material number, material type, industry sector, material group, base unit of measure from Mara, and plant material maintenance status, plant specific materials, indicator, and these fields. Enable. I'm not taking Mara again, Matner again, because I have the material number. I'm just mapping this to the output. So I'm just selecting distinct fields from these two. 1 second. Sorry, too many disturbances today. Right, So I pulled in the required fields from both the tables, and I created a target structure. Now let me validate within this data flow. No errors found. Let me go and validate at the job level. Right? No errors found. All the errors are resolved now. So now if I go and run the job, right, you'll see something additional called as global variables here, and the variables that we created are displayed. So what is a variable? So as per the definition, a variable is something that we pass a value dynamically, right, at the runtime, or you pass it dynamically, and based on that value, this one gets executed. So dynamically means every time we run it, we give some or the other value to it, or also it can have a standard value. That you should have a provision to pass some value at the runtime. So that's the reason why we have this option here. So the moment I execute, I can pass some global variable saying that, okay, this one is equal to y, and I want to execute Mara, and I don't want to execute marc. I want to keep this as n, and I want to keep this as n, right? And if I just click on OK, that will go and execute only Mara, because for everywhere we gave y, so that condition is equal to this condition, so it will execute. And for the rest of this one, we gave y and it is n there, so it will not execute. So you can do it there at the execution properties window, or you can do it here. So Mara, I already ran it, so I don't want to run it. I want to only run marc and not join. So I go and change the values here, right, and now execute the job. So scripts is the second place, this is the first place, and scripts is the second place where I can give the values. So just click on OK. Now the job is started. Now you see directly it went to marc. It did not go for Mara, though it is there, the order of execution, everything is defined. It did not go for Mara, it directly went for marc, though it is the second one. It is the cache calculation stage. So once it is done, then it will go and extract the records from marc and put it in stage marc. So now it is in the ready stage, proceed, and as it is in proceed stage, it will start picking up the records, and once it completes picking up the records, it will go to stop stage. So these are the three stages. So these are our general interview questions, right? So which version of data services that you worked on, and now you see that it's stopped, and this is the count. So it will ask you which version of data services you worked in, and the second question that you might get is where do you see, what are the different states in which you see in the monitor tab when you are getting executed, what are the different types of errors that you face. So as of now we face some errors, right? So one is the first one I told you is especially when you're reading the data from a flat file, the source or the target flat file should not be open. So if they are open, the job data services thinks that the edit is going on that particular source file or target file, and so it will throw an error. So that is error number one. So error number two, when we validate this one, so first one we saw in the Mara data flow, that is, it is not mapped, material number is not mapped, so it is throwing an error, which means the column is present on the schema out, but it is not mapped with any value from schema in. So that is an error, right? And the third one that we saw here is we created a join condition, but we did not pull in any columns to the skim out. So when you validate the job, it is a syntax error. So, it showed that error. So these are the different types of errors we work on. So as we proceed, we will see many more. So we'll talk about them. So if somebody has a question here. Yes, After.
Rakesh, when you're showing this window, it's showing the information icon on the mapping, top of it. What is this about? It's some of them.
So whenever I use anything in the query transformation, so here I used a where condition. Right, so here in the where condition it's showing an information icon, which means that it's giving an information that I have done some work. So if I do something in the group by, it will
shows
show
you
me
information.
Yeah, so it is like when we get into a data flow and open a query transformation, we can easily follow like which areas of this query transformation we already worked on.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, so now I change this scripts. I want only Marcy to be executed, and my Marcy execution is done. So let us go and check this one here. Open this and look at the data. So now the data is visible here. Now I want only join to run. So what I can do, now you know the answer. Go to my job, go to my script, and change this to n, and keep this condition to y, join, and go ahead and run the job. So this is how I control the execution of my job. Though I have multiple conditionals or multiple portions of my job, I can control the execution of my job. I can say only this portion of the job will get executed, and this is already run, or this is taking a lot of time. I don't want to rerun it again. So one run is enough. So I can define my job, which portion of my job to be executed, and this can be achieved using condition scripts and global variables. So there's one more error that we got now. So let us look at it. It says that violation of the primary key constraint. So go to the error tab, and you see an error icon here on the right on the PID. So you see the message next to that one. It says that cannot insert a duplicate key into the object stage materials. The duplicate key one number is this one. So second key number and the third key number and so on. So whenever you are trying to push a duplicate key into a particular object, right, it will throw an error. So which object you are trying to push it onto? The object which has a primary key on that one. So here I'm trying to join Mara and Marcy information, which means logically at the back end, when you have the base Mara table, the materials master data table, so it will have unique material numbers, all right, and its descriptions. Now plant is Marcy table is a plant level information where it will have a plant and the unique material number combination. So if you look at a combination of material number, Matner and works, the plant field, so this combination will be unique. So if you look at the data level, you can have duplicate material numbers, right? So here it is trying to push the duplicate material numbers, right? So that's what this thing cannot insert a duplicate object, a duplicate key into the object for a column which is defined as primary key. Now go to this condition join, open the query transformation, and on the right hand side you see material number as a primary key. So unless and until I remove it from the primary key, my job will not run, or I need to maintain stick material numbers so that I don't have duplicates. These are the two solutions if you get that error. So what is the error? Cannot insert primary key constraint violation, cannot insert duplicate keys into the objects, right? So this is the error message. So how do you resolve it? Either you make sure that you maintain distinct records till that stage, or you go and uncheck the primary key option. So this is very simple. If you want to make a column as a primary key, you select on the column, do a context menu, right click and say select primary key. Or if you want to remove a column from a primary key, select that column which is already a primary key, right click and uncheck that one. Now, if I rerun this job, only the join data flow should run. So it directly went to the join data flow, and you can see it's in ready to proceed stage. In the proceed stage, it will start picking up the records, and once it is done, it will go to the stop stage. And I'm expecting it should not throw an error now. But for some or the other reason, I expect the systems has done a bit slow. I should get them fixed. Right, so it is done. So totally have 26,666 records, and once it is done, it will just says the job is successfully done. I think some refresh problem is there. It's not getting refreshed properly. Yeah. Right, the job is successfully completed, and we resolved one more error today, which is primary key constraint and inserting duplicate keys into a column which is defined as a primary key. Right, so this is condition scripts and global variables. Now let us go ahead and any questions on this one, because going forward all your project jobs will pretty much close to this. Yeah, Zafar?
Rakesh, when we define the global variable, can be used in the other job as well? Like in the job underscore condition, you define the global variable. If I want to use it with the other job, like job underscore db underscore db here.
No, we have to recreate them because these variables are job specific. Now I selected the job and I click on the variables. I see them here. Now let us go to the other job and click on the variables. I don't see any variables, right? So these variables that I create are context to that particular job. They are job specific.
And the second question is, in the terms of interview question, you said that they will ask similar like this. So you have any specific document which we can read it, right, for this practice? Yes, something.
Okay, I haven't created one. Even Sandeep was checking with me on some interview questions. So, I'll try to create something today, and I'll try to circulate it with you guys.
Okay,
right? A basic,
basic thing.
It depends on because even yesterday when Sandeep was checking with me, I had a question like, it basically depends on my customer requirement, the job description that you have for the project. So, when I take an interview especially, I will see that if the candidate meets my customer requirement, point number one. So what is my job requirement for the customer? What is he expecting? What is his source? What is his target if the candidate has worked on this source as a target? So I'll just try to understand these things, and on a generic level, I will try to write few. And
in general level, like for example, at least we have something right in hand. Thank you.
Yeah, right, Jeff. Sure, I'll do that.
Thank you.
All right. So, any more questions on this condition scripts and global variables before we proceed to the next topic? Next topic is one of my favorite, and I'll promise that I'll also make it as a favorite for you. So if you have no questions, I'll proceed with this one. Abdul, and Bhargav, Sandeep, no questions on condition scripts and global variables? Alright, so not a problem even if you go through the recording today. If you have any questions, you can please connect with us in tomorrow's session and we can go ahead and clarify that one. Right, so the next topic is a single user instance and a multi-user instance. So what is a single user instance and what is a multi-user instance? So I will look at these two in theory today and probably try to complete one of this one. Right, so I'm just dividing this page into two parts. One is for my single user instance and the other one is for my multi-user instance. So as the name says, here I'll be having single users, and as the name says here I'll be having multiple users. So why you need this one, right? So in which scenarios you will go for a single user instance, right? So especially for pilot projects, POCs, or a pretty small project. So in these scenarios, you will go for a pilot project or a single user instance where you will have only one single data services instance, and this will extract the data from your source and it will write it into your target. So this target can be my development, it can be my quality, or it can be my production. So the first one is my source layer and the middle one is my ETL layer and this is my target layer, and I need to extract the data from my source using BODS, and initially I go and write it into my target. Insert. Right. So initially I extract the data from my source and from there I go and write it into my target. So first instance when I connect to the system, that is my development instance, so I go and work on the development. So what are the different activities I do? I extract my data and load the data into my target, and I will do what? The basic thing that we do in a development is a unit testing or a user level testing, and if there are any bugs in that one, in the bad data, so I'll fix them. So how do you test? What will be the standards for you to test? Right, so the customer will give me a requirement saying that these are the columns, this is how it should be mapped, this is the business rules and stuff. So I'll just try to validate the data based on the customer input. So how do I test my data? I test it based on what my customer asked me to do, and if I find it irrelevant, I'll go and try to change my business rule and rerun it and fix the data. Right now, if I feel that the data is good, what I will do, I will try to run this job pointing it to my quality system. Initially I pointed it to my development system, I ran my job, I tested the data and I fixed the bugs. Right now I ran the job to my QA system and I loaded the data. Now QA guys are the data owners or the QA team. They will validate the data and they will identify the defects in the data, and they will raise a ticket and ask us to work on that. So if they find a bug or defect on the data, so what they will do, they will raise a defect number 1000 and assign it back to the developer. So this developer will work on this one, fix this one, and he will again point his job and run it on the development environment and validate if the data is correct, right, if he has fixed the bug properly, and then only he will run it on this one and intimate the quality team, right? So the quality team will go and recheck the data, and if it is good, they will close this defect and they will give a sign off on the quality data, right? So they say that the exact data that what we require is present in the quality system. Now you can go ahead and load it into the production system. So now this developer again points his system BODS to the production environment, and he will do a data load into the production environment, and again the end users or data owners, they will validate the data here and give a sign off, right? So this is how your projects run on a single user instance, right? So this is my source layer, my ETL layer, and my target layers, development, QA, and production. So what we will look at, learn in the single user instance is a data store configuration technically and a system configuration. So using these two, my data store configuration and system configuration, I can tell my data services to point to this system at the time of execution, or to point to this system at the time of execution, or to point to this system at the time of execution. Right? So based on things, I can tell my data services system to act accordingly. Right? So data store configurations and my system configurations. So this must have given you a broader view on how these projects work and all those things. Now this is especially a single user instance, and how do I work with a multi-user instance, right? So what is a multi-user instance? So let us say in a project environment I have a number of objects to be developed. So I have a huge team here. So one admin, the second one is developer, the third one is tester, the fourth one is my user 1, user 2, user 3, and then the tester. So I'll give you a picture of the entire landscape. So let us go and look at this today so that we will understand the broader picture, and then we can get into the sub details. So I have an admin, I have 3 developers, D1, D2, D3. So this is my tester 1 and tester 2. I can also have a tester 2. And then I have my production local repository. So let us look at a broader picture, what exactly happens here. Right, so this is my development environment. I'm just trying to create some partitions here, visual partitions. And this is my QA environment. And this is my prod environment. So remember, we talk about this in an interview. That's like 100% yes for you. And the second thing is you have almost like 3 questions on your certification on this. Alright, so this is my admin, and right, so now these 3 guys, right, this guy worked on accounts payable, this guy is working on accounts receivable, and this guy is working on general ledger. Now how do I send all these 3 things for testing? So it is not like my single user instance that I run it in dev and I point it to QA so that the QA guys will go and look at the data. No, this is not possible here because I have 3 different local repositories which has 3 different jobs. Now in these cases I need to have one central repository which is a common access place for all these 3 guys. So these 3 guys can go and upload their code into the central repository. Once they complete the development, they can go and upload their code into the central repository. Now developer 1, developer 2 and developer 3 uploaded their code. So my center has AP, AR and my general ledger job. Now it is in one place. So central repository is a concept where you can't go and execute the job. So it is just a storage location where you can maintain different versions of the job. We'll look in end to end about it as we start learning it. Now this has to be sent to my QA central repository, right? So all this code has to be sent to my QA central repository so that my testers, they can download this code from here, right? So one at a time. So this guy can download AP, this can download AR, and they can run these 2 jobs in parallel. Then tester 1 can download the GL job. So how do I move this code from here to here? So what we do is we create something called as a code promotion repositories. Alright, so we create something here called as a code promotion repositories. And we use this is nothing but our local repository, but we don't execute any jobs. What we will do is we'll get the latest version of the job, and so what I will do with this code promotion repository, I'll get the latest version of these 3 jobs into my code promotion repository, and from here I will upload these latest version of the jobs into my dev into my QA central repository. Now I have my accounts payable, accounts receivable and general ledger, all my 3 jobs present in my QA central repository. So this guy will first start with account payable, and this guy will get the latest version of accounts receivable and run it parallelly, and once these guys are done, then this guy will get the general ledger job and he will run it. So as they identify the defects, so they will raise what? A ticket and assign a ticket number and assign it to the developer. So this guy worked on AP, so this guy tested AP. So if there is a defect in the AP job, so he will try to map it to this user. So there are different tools like HPQC, Solman, where you can do a version control and ticketing activity. So this guy will raise a ticket and say like, hey, you worked on accounts payable, there is some issue here which you need to fix, and fix it. So what this guy will do, again he will run this job here, fixing that one, and then he will upload the code into the central repository, and from here the code promotion consultant gets the latest version of the code into his local repository and then uploads that into the quality and intimates this guy. This guy will download the latest version and try to run this one. Just give me a second, I'm running out of battery. Right, so this guy, so let us say second tester identifies a defect on the accounts receivable, so he will raise a defect number and then he will raise a ticket for that, and that ticket will be assigned to the developer 2. Developer 2 will work on his local repository, fix that one, uploads that into the central repository and notifies the code promotion guys. These code promotion guys will get the latest version of accounts receivable and upload that into the quality account receivable, which means from a local repository we can configure more than one central repositories. It can be dev, it can be QA, right? And then this, he will notify this guy, and this way he will get the latest version, run it, and if it is fixed, then they will go with the production central repository, and again there will be a code promotion guy who will be extracting the latest version of the code from the quality environment which is tested and fixed, right? And he will go and upload that into his production environment, and there will be a final load consultant, right? So data load consultant who will be running these jobs in the production environment. So if you look at this one, so this is where we define the bugs and fix that, and once it is a bug-free code, then we will promote it to the production central repository. So here there will be something called as a war room, general on the production this thing. So where we will have the flow order, where we'll define which object is independent of which and which object is dependent on which, what is the order of execution, which one is the first one, which one is the second one, what are the prerequisites that needs to be done, and based on this production load guy, he will get the data, he will get the jobs from that production central repository, run them, notify that this job is done, and then he will get the next second job, he will run it and notify that this job is done, and so on. So he will load the data into the production system one by one in the order which is defined in the flowchart. So this is how your multi-user instance works, right? So any questions on this before we go and learn how to create the single user instance and multi-user instance? So if you have any questions on this architecture, right, so please let me know, because I want this foundations to be very strong so that we can go and know how we can do all these things. So as I promised you in the beginning, we'll be talking about admin roles, architecture, and also the development activities and tester activities. So we'll not spare even a single responsibility here. We'll try to learn each and everything. So this is the architecture for a single user instance, and this is the architecture for a multi-user instance, right? So any questions, please let me know. Let me clarify them so that we can proceed further. Alright, so if you have any questions, you can ask me later as well. So now let us go and see how do I create a single user instance on my system. So let us say this is my single user instance. This LR1, local repository 1, is my single user instance, and I have dev, QA, and prod target environments, and I need to create system configurations and data store configurations so that I can achieve this activity. So how do I do that? So let us say, just for example, so my data stores points to one database called as target. So let us say that I have target 1, 2, 3 or dev, QA, and prod, 3 databases. Or let me create them here. I'm creating new databases, dev, QA, and prod, so that when I create data store configurations, So I'm creating three databases, dev, db_qa and db_prod. Alright, so just leave it, use the existing database there. So now my target data store, it connects to a database called as target, right? So let us assume that there are dev, QA and prod, three databases present on the database side, or three different instances, right? So how do I point my data store? This data store, one time you go and run on the development environment, one time you go and run on the quality environment, and one time you go and run on the production environment. So we can do that, or we can achieve that. Once we click on the advanced button, you see something called as configurations. So we can go and create a data store level configurations to achieve this activity. So to create a data store level configuration, click on edit and you will see the configuration window. So here it has only one configuration. Now you have these buttons like create a new configuration, duplicate configuration, rename configuration, delete configuration, sort it in alphabetical order, A to Z, Z to A, move to the first, whatever the default configuration that you are keeping as. So this is my default configuration, so move it to first, right? Create an aliases and all these things. So I'll just duplicate this configuration thrice. Right, so first one I'm calling this as dev. Though technically they are pointing to only one database, I'm just calling them as dev, QA and prod. So generally on a project level, the server names and the database's names and the username and password will change from dev to QA and QA to prod. So but I'm just maintaining the same information because of the limitation. I have only one system at the backend. I'm maintaining the same information, but I'm maintaining three different configurations, dev, QA and prod. So once you define them, just click on apply. Right, even in future if you have three different systems at the back end, you can point this to system 2 and you can point this to system 3. So once you define these configurations, make sure that you click on apply and OK. So if you don't click on apply, these configurations will be lost. So now if you see the configuration 1 is renamed to dev. So why it picked only dev? Right? So now here earlier it was configurations 1. Now you see 3 configurations. Now why did it pick dev? So because if you look at this one, it says dev as a default configuration. Now you can go and switch QA as a default configuration and you can switch production as the default configuration. So this is something that you'll be doing when you're developing the activity. Right, when you're developing this job, you can go and create a default configuration set and just click on apply so that your data store will accept that as a default. So though you run your job without your system configuration, with your data store configurations, it will go and accept that one. So for the source, even I'll do that one. Edit, duplicate configurations. You can right click and rename it. So this is an admin level activity, let me tell you frankly. So administrators will create these configurations, system configurations, and they'll push them into the central repository so that all the remaining users can download that. So even if you look at a single user instance, I just mentioned here only one developer. So this guy can also be, there can also be a possibility to or chances to have an admin right in this box, and he will create this one, and they both can have a common central repository, right? So this guy can create these data stores. So if he wants to maintain the secrecy, he don't want to give these credentials to the developer, he can create these data stores and upload them into the central repository, and he can maintain the data store configurations, and then he will ask this guy to get the latest version of these data stores from the central repository. Alright, so I did it for my source as well. So if you just click on advanced, you see 3 configurations, and dev is my default. So let me do it for my SAP data store as well. I click on that, advanced, and go to edit, make a copy of this configurations, then first one call it as dev, call it as QA, and call it as fraud. Just click on apply and OK, and apply and OK. Now with this I created 3 configurations at each and every data store. One is dev, QA, and prod. Now let us say I'm working on a scenario where I have a table that is present in my development source, but it is not present in my quality source. So how do I do that? Which means it is present in one environment, but that particular table is not present in the other environment. So how do I do that? I go and make it as my default configuration to dev in my source, and on my target I make it as QA, and I run my job, right? So this is how I achieve it. So in my development there is some table XYZ on my source, and it is not present in my QA source. So if I want to pull that development table into my QA environment, so this is how I'm going to do that. So I'll go to my source, I'll keep the default configuration to what? Development, and I go to my target and I keep my default configuration to QA. Then I create a job to pull that particular table, and I will run this job. So this runs with the default configuration dev, and this runs with the default configuration QA, and with this I get to run the data from my development to QA. Now with this we created our system default data store configurations. Now if you want to pull the data from dev to load it into QA, you can keep it to default to dev as yes. So configurations, you can keep this as yes for development, and for this one target you can keep QA as a default one. Right. So this is my data store level configuration. So every time I run my jobs, I can't go and keep changing these things, right? So I want to run it on development environment, I have to set them as default, then run the job. Then I want to go and do it on the QA environment, QA to QA. So I have to set them as default and run the job on production. So every time for every job, so let us say I'm just talking about 3 data stores here, 2 sources and 1 target. So in real-time jobs and projects, you go and see that you'll have almost like 4 to 5 data stores. You'll have intermediate staging data stores, then you have lookup initial and lookup data stores, then you'll have your source and target data stores. So you can go and do all the changes at 6 levels, right? So the next step that we need to know is we need to bind them into one set, so that at the time of executing my job I can go and choose like, okay, this is how I can pick my execution, right? So, or pick my default configuration. So these 3 has the data store level configuration. Now to define the system configuration, go to tools and go for system configuration, and here create 3 configs, right? So first one is system config dev, rename the configuration dev. Then second one, rename the configuration as QA, and this third one, rename the configuration as prod. So this is my system level configuration where I am binding all the developments to one string, right? All the QAs to another string. So that at the time of execution, there's no need for me to go and change at the data store level. I can just select my system default configuration so that it will run on this one. Right, I created my data store level configurations at the data store. I created my system level configurations from tool system configurations. Now, when I execute the job, so I see something different here. So this is not there earlier, right? So this is not there, and now I see this one. And if I leave it to default, I'm not selecting anything here. So whatever the default configurations that are there on the data store level will be active, right? So it is sorry. So this one has development and this one has QA as the default data store configuration. So job will run accordingly. It will pick this one as dev and this one as QA and run it because I haven't chosen any system configuration here. But if I click on this drop down and go for dev, no matter what you give here as a default configuration, that will be overwritten by your system configuration, right? So you get an option to choose this dev, QA and prod from this drop down, and based on that you get to click on OK and you get to execute this job in your development environment or QA environment or your production environment. So this is how I create and maintain my single user instance. I can go and create a single user instance in a small project and not only create and maintain that one, but also I can run my jobs. At the time of execution, I'll go and select my system configuration and say, hey, you run on dev, you run on QA, or you run on prod. But if I want a combination of things, right, so I can keep my default data store configurations, one to dev and another one to QA, and if I don't pick any system configuration here, right, at the time of executing the job, if I don't pick any system configuration, I'll leave it to default, my data store default level settings will be inactive, will be active, and they will be used as the default configurations. Right, so just keep this in mind. This is how we create a single user instance with the help of data store and system level configurations. Any questions on this one? A single user instance. So this is especially used for the pilot projects, and based on your experience, you will be deployed in different projects as like the senior consultants, leads, architects, freshers, trainees, testers. Right, it can be anything, but you know, it's always good to know a next level knowledge, right? And always good to know what happens when you become a lead, what happens when you become an architect, what are your roles and responsibilities on data services when you work as a project manager, right, as a solution architect. So these are the different levels that you know, we will look at right from the testers. So who are testers? So somebody who just knows data services basics and they will say what I do, right? I will ask them to run this job, they'll run it. I'll ask them to get this job from the central repository, they'll get it. So they don't know much of it, so we map them as a shadow resource or as a testers. Next one, intermediate level people, I use them as developers, right? A little more knowledgeable guys, senior consultants, I use them as you know, code promotion guys. Or the administrators. This lead consultants and architects, I use them as administrators. So it depends on, you know, what are the different roles that we play in this project, and it's always good to know the next level knowledge on the tool, right? So that you can always, you know, in my current organization, I do a program called a Step Up program where I will always encourage my, you know, all my team members to do the next level activity so that, you know, they are self-motivated and they are ready to get to the next level. So a developer can become a senior developer, a junior guy can become a consultant, a senior developer can become, a lead consultant or senior consultant, whatever it is. So they can always aim at the next step. So, try to learn this tool for your next step as well, so that once you get into the industry and you get some challenging environment where you need to work on a new task, that you will be ready on that one. Okay, so this is our single user instance, and this is how we go and create the data store configurations and system configurations, and we also saw how this multi-user instance will be there. So probably creating a multiple user instance, central repository, talking about all these things, and also knowing like how the developers work on the central repository, how the testers work on the central repository. So all these things will take a couple of days from tomorrow. Tomorrow we have a class, so just keep that in mind. We have an off on Sunday and Monday, Indian people, so it is on Sunday morning and Monday morning. So US people, it is on Saturday night and Sunday night we have an off. Alright, so just keep that in mind. Do not miss the classes. Next two sessions are pretty important, and if you still needs to enroll, so please get enrolled so that we'll have one common link for the rest of the sessions. We'll not have any uninterrupted sessions. We'll have a continuous session going on. So tomorrow and day after tomorrow, or like tomorrow, I'll try to complete how do we set up the central repository, creation of central repository, and how a developer uses that. And probably on the next session on Monday night US time and Tuesday morning Indian time, we will see how the remaining or what are the remaining things that we need to look into the central repository concept and how this works. But trust me, people who know central repository has already worked on the projects, right? So it's that quite important. Talk about it in your interviews. You can crack this pretty good, and you have 8 to 10 questions for sure in your certification. So in my previous organization, I trained 40 plus people, the entire junior folks on certification, and it's a rigorous 3 months training that I did for them, and I gave them multiple exams, and out of 40 people, 38 cleared certification. They are certified. One failed because he did not attempt, because he was not doing good, and one did not even apply for the certification. So that's the success rate. So I'll talk about each and everything that is mandatory for your interviews, for your career, and for your certification. So based on your interest, you can pick them. So this is very important topic. Please do not miss that, and try to be on time. We'll start at 6 a.m. IST. So we'll try to start sharp tomorrow so that we will get some more time to talk about this. Probably tomorrow, since it is a weekend, probably we'll try to stretch a class for a bit so that we can cover most of it, right? So any questions in today's session, please let me know. If not, you can reach out to me in tomorrow's session. All right, guys, thanks for your time. Have a good day and good night. We'll catch up tomorrow again. Thank you.